around. Oh, yeah, there she is. Lovely. So back to some more serious matter. So my talk is about Soma design or somaesthetic design, and we'll see what you say. I'm going to try and talk about both aesthetics and ethics, and where I think that those are sort of grounded in our corporal selves, in our bodies, in our movements. And I don't know, maybe you guys already have a grip on what you mean by aesthetics, or what you mean by ethics, or what you mean by movement and bodies. I can say that for me, this is still in parts a mystery, and will probably keep me busy for the rest of my research time, I think. So hopefully you'll ask a lot of really interesting questions about what I really mean by these things. So I just wanted to start by showing a picture from last week. So this is some of the design work we're doing right now. These are some of my PhD students, and oddly enough, what we're designing here is human-drone interaction. So what we do is very, very much grounded in bodies and movement and felt experiences, what might be framed as first-person experiences. And I don't know, we'll see. Maybe some of you will find that problematic for all sorts of reasons. Then please tell me, and we can have an interesting discussion about that, I think. But anyway, this is what it looks like. Our office is a mess, and what we do is very messy and very physical, very bodily, where we really try to feel what we're designing as we're designing it. I had so much fun when the CHI conference was in Glasgow, because I've been working quite a lot with Catherine Isbister. And she was like, oh, Kia, after the CHI conference, we need to go up to the Orkney Islands, because this is where my family comes from. Icebusters or something like that is how it's pronounced up in the Orkney Islands. And apparently Icebusters is like the most common last name up in the Orkney Islands. And so she's wanted to go there to see her relatives, or rather their graves. And I was like, graves, yes, Orkney Islands and graves, that's what I want to do. That sounds amazing. Anyway, so we went there, we took a train, it was fantastic. We went all the way up to the Orkney Islands, and there was a tomb called the Tomb of the Icebusters, Icebusters or Icebusters. So we're like, okay, and we hitchhiked there, and we came to this tomb, and it turned out it wasn't really a grave where her relatives would be found. It was a grave that was 5,000 years old. so we're like, oh, okay, but yeah, okay, we'll have a look anyway. Who knows? Maybe they're relatives of her anyway, even though it's 5,000-year-old skeletons. And it was the most amazing experience. We were allowed to go into this tomb. That wouldn't happen in Sweden. You're not allowed to go into something that is 5,000 years old and touch stuff and move about. And we were allowed to do this on our own. We were also allowed to touch the tools they had found in these tombs. And here's one of the tombs, and that's my hand grabbing it. And as you see, it's basically a stone. And the stone has some chipped marks on it where my thumb fits really nicely. And as soon as you grab this stone, you're like, oh yeah, this makes sense. This is a tool for using in this way. I hold my thumb here, and then I can use this heavy tool to do work. It makes sense immediately. It makes you wonder whether we've ever produced anything in HCI that will last 5,000 years from now, and that somebody will pick up and say, oh yeah, this makes sense. I can use this. Anyway, apart from how it makes sense towards my body, what was interesting was also the skeletons, obviously. So the skeletons there, you could see from them, from, you know, the muscle, where the muscles had been attached to the skeleton and so on, that these were strong people. Oh my God. And if you handle a tool like this one, basically a stone, to do your work, of course you need muscles, right? And so what we see here is, of course, how culture depends on tools, but also how bodies change with culture and with the tools that the culture affords. So if you were living in this time and age, you would be buff, you would be strong, or you would be dead. While you guys, looking at you, none of you is that buff, are you? Sorry. Oh yeah, but slim, you're slim, Matt. Yeah, no big muscles. I want to see the big muscles. Nope. So of course we're shaped by the fact that we sit in front of bloody Zoom all day, not moving, not doing anything sensible with our bodies, instead doing these very tiny movements that gives us problems with our shoulders and whatnot. And my point here is not only that it shapes our bodies in that literal sense of muscles growing or not growing, but also, of course, our nervous system and our responses to the world and our ways of making sense of the world are shaped by how we interact with the world and the tools that mediate our touch on you know, with the world. And this is where I'm super interested, you know, bringing back in the muscles, the skeleton, the nervous system, how the culture completes my body and my outlook on what I can do and what I cannot do in the world. And that's where this Soma design sort of fits in a way. So without further ado, let's do it. What if you sit up properly in your chairs and put both of your feet on the floor so that you're grounded, and then put your hands on your thighs and don't lean to your backrest, but sit up, and release your shoulders. And I'm going to take you through a silly design exercise that goes really fast and doesn't really give justice to how it's really done, but it gives you a flavor of what might be happening. So I want you to close your eyes without falling asleep. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and try to land here and now. You've probably been running around today, doing all sorts of stuff, work-wise. If we can just let that go for a while and just turn to our inner experience, the experience of breathing and the experience of sitting on this chair with our feet resting on the floor. If you start by turning your attention to your feet, and just feel how they're resting on the floor. Your right foot, where is that today? Is it heavy or light on the floor? Is it pointing directly forwards or maybe a little bit to the right or to the left? And the toes, can you feel your toes? You can wriggle them a bit. And your heel. And now turn to your left foot. Where is that today? Is it heavy or light? Is it pointing directly forward? Or maybe to the left or to the right? And your toes, can you feel them? And your heel. And now if you compare the two, compare your right foot with your left foot. Are they the same or are they different? Are they pointing in the same direction or maybe in different directions? So let's move upwards towards your calves. Your right calf, where is that today? And your left calf, where is that today? Are they the same or are they different? Now let's move further up to your knees. Maybe you need to shift a little bit to feel where your knees are. Your right knee, where is that today? Is it directly above your foot? Or maybe a little bit in front of the foot, or to the left of the foot, or right of the foot? And now turn your attention to your left knee. Where is that today? Is that directly above your foot, or maybe to the left or to the right, or in front of or behind? And now if you compare the two, do you feel like your knees are pointing in the same direction or maybe in different directions? Now turn to your thighs. Now part of your thigh is resting probably on the chair, and other parts are in the free air. Can you feel where they stop resting on the chair and move out of the chair? You turn to your right thigh. How is that today? Is it big or small? Is it heavy on the chair or light? And now turn to your left one, to the left thigh. How is that resting on the chair? Is it heavy or light? Do you think it's big or small? And if you compare the two, are they the same or are they different? Okay, now turn to your sitting bones, and maybe you don't know where your sitting bones are, so you can wriggle a bit on the chair, like if you lean a few millimeters to the right and then back to the middle, and then a few millimeters, not much, tiny, tiny movements. And maybe you can start feeling your sitting bones and how they're pushing down into the chair. In fact, your body, your upper body is sort of weighing down on your sitting bones. Your right sitting bone, your left sitting bone. Now, if you sway a bit again to the right and to the left, let's imagine that your chair is now following you. So as you lean a little bit to the right, the left side of the chair is pushing up. It's pushing on your left sitting bone. And so you lean more and more. And now we come back to the middle, and as you're turning or leaning a few millimeters to the left, your chair now changes its shape again, and it's pushing you up on the right side. You come back to the middle again, and then as you lean a little bit forward, just a few millimeters, your chair is now going to try and push you out of your chair. Let's stop doing this silly design exercise. So my aim was to come to ideas around what would a shape-changing chair be? What would it do? What should it be doing? How should it interact with your sitting bones? How should it interact with your weight? Should it be sort of, as you lean to one side, that it tries to push you out of the chair? Or what should it do? How can you feel that interaction in such a way that you can start designing with the chair and the shape changing of the chair as a material? We could imagine all sorts of stuff, right? That the top of the chair suddenly becomes a bit more rigid, or that it becomes flexible, that it moves back and forth. All of these things come with digital materials like tangible interactions or shape-changing materials and whatnot. And we need to learn how to design with these, right? So how do you design with something that is like so fundamentally supporting you and your way of sitting, so that you actually know what you're doing, so that you can feel it and know it. Well, first you need to know yourself. You need to know your own body. You need to know your sitting bones and your thighs and where they are and how heavy they are and so on. And then you need to start imagining, or even putting in technology to sort of imagine what this could do, what kind of interactions we could get from that. I don't know what you were feeling when I was trying to get you to focus on your own body, if you got lost in that, or if you could suddenly feel differences in your body that you weren't aware of before I asked you to have a look. So a lot of the time people talk about being asymmetrical, and that they didn't know that they were asymmetrical until I asked. Some people have these weird experiences like, oh yeah, my one side was all blue and the other one was orange, or, you know, and so these kinds of inner experiences of what is going on are super interesting to me as a Soma designer, and a way of interacting. So that was a quick glimpse into how we do it. Now, unfortunately, I need to remove this amazing talking head from the slide, because otherwise I can't show my videos. So, but you saw it and it was amazing. So now let's go back to, where is my, here, I'll go back to normal PowerPoint boring stuff, and just share in a different way. Sorry about that. I thought that was just so much fun. I had to do it. Okay, so let me go through a little bit of design work that we've been doing in order to give you a feeling for what can be designed with this way of engaging. So a long time ago, I was leading a center called the Mobile Life Center, and we were working with IKEA. I love working with IKEA. They're amazing. They're so much fun to work with. But if you work with IKEA, obviously what you want to do is furniture, right? And they said, we want to design furniture that is playful, that people enjoy, that they can do their own aesthetical installations in their homes, but also health. We're interested in health and sustainability. So we're like, oh, okay, health and furniture and digital stuff. We don't know. Okay, let's start with some body practices. And we fell in love with one of these body practices called Feldenkrais. It could have been something else, but this one was so much fun. So I don't know if anyone is a Feldenkrais practitioner, or if you've ever tried it. It's a really fascinating practice. To me, I'm not that interested in whether it's scientifically correct, if it's doing what it's supposed to do, namely helping people to figure out how to handle pain. I was more interested in the fact that it took me back to some of the basic pleasures of moving, like a baby almost, and extending on my repertoire of what I can do. Like, for example, when we walk normally in one way, right? We forgot how to do skipping. Skipping is so much fun. You know what I mean by skipping, right? Like woohoo, 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 like kids do. So some adults can't do it anymore. We've forgotten about the fun ways of moving. So I'm going to show you one of the lessons that I fell in love with, and it's moving like a baby, and something that I don't do normally as an adult, but once you do it, you recognize it and you remember it. So let's have a look at this particular Feldenkrais lesson. Oh. So babies always work, right? in PowerPoints. So what did we do with this? So it may seem kind of strange to roll about on the floor. And the version of this lesson that I love the most is one where you hold on to your feet and you roll back and forth on the floor. It's just amazing. Well, so for us, it was just a way of returning to how do you design bigger things like whole mats or lamps or whatever that engage you in digital interactions in interesting ways. So we designed, for example, we did a bunch of designs, but a couple of them were, one was we call the breathing light, and it's super simple. It's not very advanced technology. All that it does is register your breathing pace, and then the lamp will be dimming in the same tempo as you're breathing. So you see the sensor there, super simple sensor. It's just measuring the distance to your chest. And then you see the lamp that this person is underneath, and it's dimming in the same tempo as she's breathing. It took us ages to get that to work properly so that it wouldn't go off sync. And so here's Johanna, my colleague, who is not working for Spotify. But anyway, here she is breathing, and you can see how the light goes up and down. So super lovely. I don't know why it's so amazing, but it helps you to deepen your breathing in a really lovely way. As you do this, you can be on this mat, and this mat is, again, a super simple thing. What it's doing is just that it's heating up underneath different body parts as you're asked to sort of focus on, as I was doing before, I asked you to focus on your feet. Imagine that you had some heat coming underneath first your right foot and then your left foot. It sort of helps you to focus on and experience different body parts. And I guess living in Sweden, this kind of nice warm thing is also lovely. It again transports you into a space that is absolutely fascinating. So these are some of the things that we designed for IKEA. We put them into people's homes for a long time, 3 months. It's the first time as a researcher I've had designs where people were crying when we took them away, because they had somehow engaged with them in such a way that they became part of their everyday life. We had a 13-year-old girl who said, they made me so much more confident in myself. I now know that if I'm supposed to give a talk in school or whatever, I could just return to my own body, to my breathing, and I will be more present and more daring to give talks and whatnot. So, and there were other sort of really heartwarming stories about how people used it. Doesn't happen that often, I think, with our research prototypes. Maybe with yours, but not with mine, for sure. Anyway, so what is this? Why did I say that this was going to be about aesthetics? And what on earth do I mean by aesthetics when my design work is focusing on bodies and movement? Well, I'm building it in parts on a philosopher. His name is Richard Shusterman. I spent my sabbatical with him. He's really interesting philosopher, quite unusual. Here he is in his golden suit, part of an art piece that he found interesting to be participating in. He is a pragmatist, for those of you who know your philosophy, sort of builds on phenomenology and pragmatism and Dewey and those guys, right? And what he does is that he introduces this concept, somaesthetics, and he's super proud of the fact that it's putting together two words, soma with aesthetics, reusing the A in the middle. He loves that. Anyway, so somaesthetics, what is that about? Well, soma is a way of saying you cannot divide people into body and mind. Body and mind are connected. So as I move, that generates ideas and thoughts in my brain, and it generates ways of interacting with other people, and vice versa. As I'm thinking about stuff, that also makes things happen in my body with my hormones and my muscles and my nervous system reactions and so on. There's never any way you can separate our way of being in the world from our bodies. So the whole mind-body shit, Descartes, you know, the guy who died in Stockholm in a very cold castle, his idea that you could do a dualistic division of mind and body just does not work. We're one. And so if we're one, how do we talk about that? Because our language and the Western culture is just riddled with metaphors and ways of speaking that divide them. Well, then Richard Shusterman says, let's have another word. Let's use the word soma. And by soma, I mean the living, purposive, sentient, perceptive body or bodily subjectivity, the subject, me, the whole of myself. And for those of you who know your philosophy, others have tried to do similar, introduce similar words. I don't know how to do it, but at least this one makes sense to me, you know. But what about aesthetics? What do you think aesthetics is? What is your definition of aesthetics? Any HCI researcher should have an understanding of aesthetics, right? So for me, I wasn't really clear about it. You know, a lot of the time when I ask this question, people will say, well, it's about beauty, isn't it? And you go like, you know, if you do a horror game, are you trying to make something beautiful? You're trying to make something scary, right? So it's not necessarily about beauty. Is it about the exact properties of an object? Can I say that this particular object, my mobile phone, has certain aesthetic properties? It is about my experience of my mobile phone, isn't it? And depending on my prior experiences, I will be able to appreciate my mobile phone in different ways. But it's not solely the object. It is also me and my experience of the object. And this is why some people talk about technology as experience, if you read McCarthy and Wright, or Dewey's art as experience. So aesthetics is about experience. But also when you say beauty, and when I show things like I just did, then you sort of get focused on the visual sense, right? What is visually interesting to us. But we experience through all our senses. I just made the point that we are also bodies. So we do have skin, and we have movements, and we have hearing, and we have all of these tasting stuff, and we can swallow stuff, and we can do all sorts of, have sex and whatnot. All of these things are part of how we experience the world. And so our aesthetic experience needs to involve all of these things. And so when he speaks about aesthetics, he talks about an awakening from the mindless, joyless behaviors. So let me take an example. I guess you are going to have dinner soon, as I am. And there are many ways to eat your dinner. One is to go slough, 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 done. You have your nutrition, then you can move on to do other stuff. Or you can actually enjoy it. You can spend some time looking at the food, smelling the food, tasting it, chewing it, swallowing, just observing your arm as you grab the fork, if you're using a fork, and how you move that fork to your mouth, and what happens when it touches your lips, so you can spend time deepening your appreciation of everyday events, or of arts, or of mobile phones, or whatnot. This is what he means by aesthetics. So it's an active stance. Okay, it is a desire to live a good life, to deepen your ways of being in the world. and to be richer in what you can experience. And whether that is of music or of mobile phone interaction or of picking up some instrument or bicycling or whatever, you can be there with your bicycle and experience it. I guess you're still bicycling, right, Matt? Yeah. Okay, so do you appreciate your bike? Do you appreciate how your butt is sitting on the bike? What do you say? The bike chair, and how you're pedaling and all of the movements and what is going on there. Yeah, you do. Lovely.
I mean, absolutely. I think I've written a bit about this, that I feel like I'm part of that whole object, a bit like I think, you know, in that article I cited, was inspired by your work about riding on horses in Iceland, right?
Yeah, I do ride in Iceland. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in Sweden, of course, obviously. I ride everywhere. Whenever there's a horse around, I'll ride. Anyway, so what Schusterman says, and I think some of you will find this annoying, is that this is the highest art of all, that of living a better life. Okay? So what is he talking about here? He's talking about, rather than living in a way where you're using asceticism or Lutheran views or whatever to get a better afterlife, you should try to appreciate the life you have here and now. And you should deepen your appreciation of what you do, whether it's bicycling or eating food or engaging with designing technology for other people. Go deep, experience it, be there with what you're doing. So it's going back to the old debate between Plato and Socrates and so on about what is life about. So for me, oddly enough, this gives me a direction to do my design work. I'm here to do design that improves some people's lives. That's what I'm supposed to do. And I've been designing all sorts of stuff like bracelets for people to measure their emotional blah, blah, blah shit, and I never had a direction. Why am I doing this stuff? Why am I measuring somebody's emotion from their sweat level or whatever? What is it that I want people to deepen and understand about themselves to improve on? So this is what I get from Schusterman. He's like a hippie philosopher. I think he spent some time in California when he was doing some of these theories, and there was some smoking and whatnot. But he's of course not the only one. If you turn to all of these highly influential people who have led Goodwin and whatnot, all of these people who've written about what we are, what is intelligence, what does it mean to be human, and so on, all of them, and a lot of them influencing the HCI field, all of them say the same thing. We are in the world with our bodies, with our emotions, with our whole selves, and that's where we're designing. And when you put a tool into that equation, whether it's a stone that you can hold in your hand or something else, you are going to change what that body can do and what that body can understand and engage with. So Sheets Johnston, another one of my favorite philosophers, she was a dancer and choreographer. This is a photo of her. And she has felt like a lot of work in science and in philosophy sort of forgot about the body. And she says movement is primary, and language and all of that stuff is just secondary, right? Movement comes first, and then comes language. Just look at a baby. They don't come out speaking. They come out moving. And once they've been moving for a while, they start talking. So language is secondary. Just look at Schusterman's old studies of plans and situated actions. Intelligence is enacted in action, in and through movement of the whole soma, not as some kind of symbolic thing going on somewhere else, right? And when it comes to emotion, which is of course extremely important for any HCI person because we want to do user experience stuff, right? So she says emotion is of course tightly connected to movement. So without the readiness to act in a certain way and without certain corporal tonicities, a certain feeling would not and indeed could not be felt. And a certain action would not, and indeed could not, be taken, since the postural dynamic of the body are what make the feeling and the action possible. Yeah, I don't know how much emotion theory you've been reading, but basically emotion is what colors our dreams and dyes our everyday actions. And it's what makes us move and make choices. And without emotion, we don't know what to do. Should I do A or B? Who knows, right? So anyway, what kinds of design comes out of this? I'll just show you some more. I showed you the lamp and the mat, but we've also done all sorts of other weird stuff. On the left-hand side, you see my PhD student Pavel wearing a corset. And the corset has in it inflatable elements. And what this corset can do is it also has sensors. So it can, for example, register how he's breathing. And as he's breathing in, the inflatables can push back or give way, depending on what you want to do. Or we can have two corsets. I could be wearing one and Matt could be wearing the other one. And as I breathe in, he could feel it on his body. So yeah, so why would we do this? So we've done it for a singer, a professional singer. Her name is Kelsey Cotton. She wants others to feel what it feels like to be singing. We also did it for mental health issues. I guess you know about deep pressure. If you're super stressed out, then somebody holding you tight or having a heavy blanket when you're trying to sleep is a good thing because it calms down the nervous system. So we use it for that in combination with breathing techniques that we know have beneficial effects on stress and so on. So that was that one. The chair in the middle is there for the ladies in the room. So some of you may have had kids and may remember that you were told by the midwife that after you had your kid, you need to strengthen your pelvic floor, right? Do you know where your pelvic floor is? Most people don't. So let's sit on the chair again and now tense your pelvic floor. Can you tense it 12 o'clock? Can you tense it 9 o'clock? Can you tense it 6 o'clock? Can you relax it all the way down? Or is it always a little bit tensed? Okay, so we thought that that was a fun problem to engage with. So as you sit on this chair and you have one leg on one side of each side of this big bulky thing in the middle, we have shape-changing elements that push up into the private parts of women so that we can feel whether we are indeed tensing the pelvic floor or if we're just tensing something else, the butt, for example. So that's a lovely design. Together with Steve Benford's group, they were curious about our way of working. So they invited us over to do some design work. And, you know, they do uncomfortable interactions and we do comfortable ones. So they thought that, you know, this is going to be fun. Let's see what comes out of this. One of the things that came out was the breathing guitar. So as you're playing the guitar, and this is one of Steve Benford's favorite activities, if you're a performer, you can become very nervous, very tensed. So we were like, well, what if we could mirror your breathing back through the guitar? So we put these inflatables onto the guitar so that you can listen either to your own breathing or get help in relaxing so that you're not so stressed out. And then you have Vasiliki, who's now moved to Copenhagen. She has created a couple of wings for herself. Again, reinforcing her own breathing on the back. And this is a very poetic project. I'm not going to talk more about that, but you'll have to read about it once it's published in Tukai soon, I hope. We also have a group who are doing female health and especially interested in stuff like the first time you start menstruating. Again, the ladies, do you remember? So around when you were 12, 13 years old, maybe. It's a bloody hassle to get to know yourself. It's really hard to figure out what's going on and why the month, you know, it has mood swings, it has all sorts of stuff. I don't do it anymore. I'm a granny these days, but when I did, it was, really influencing a lot of stuff. So what this system is, these probes are doing, you can read about them in the CAI conference this year, last year, 2020, is that you can take a little bit of mucus from down there, and then you can put it on a glass that you put on your mobile so that you can see what phase you're in your menstrual cycle. So when you're, for example, when you're fertile, the middle picture, the crystallized thing, that's when you're fertile. So it's only about 2 days a month that is happening. Also some shape-changing stuff. So again, engaging with the soma and with the appreciation of your own body, of your menstruation. I also want to show you an example from Australia, from Joseph Ladelfa, who's been working with Floyd Miller. Now, Joseph wanted to do drones, and he wanted to do drones that help you do Tai Chi. So drones, for the most part, when we hear about them, are horrible things that scare you or are used for military purposes or privacy intrusive or whatever. He created these lovely, lovely drones. They look like that, and like a lotus flower, and they have color, they change, and so on. And here you have myself and Joseph. How I'm interacting with the drone. I think you got the point, right? So what I'm doing is I'm holding the drone between my hands. So he's 3D printed these things that you hold onto your hand, and the drone is moving by motion capture system. So it's looking to try and be between my hands, and so it's trying to make me move more slowly and make me do these movements that you do in Tai Chi, where you put your weight back and forth on your hips in an interesting manner. Again, a Soma design that is absolutely fabulously beautiful and interesting. So I was like, how do I articulate this way of designing? I'm going to do a manifesto. I think manifestos were sort of popular in our field for a while. And so I wanted to do a manifesto. I think that's a cool thing. So this is my Soma design manifesto. So let me just go quickly through some of this. So as I said before, my aim here is to try and articulate this idea that you should be designing for living a better life, not for living a better afterlife. So a lot of HCI work is about saving milliseconds or being as efficient as you can, delivering your bloody work task, choop, choop, choop. It's not about whether you enjoy that experience, whether this gives you a good life or not. And I don't want to be, acting as if I don't know that third world people or a lot of people have to work in order to survive. But I still think that even if you have to work in a shitty factory, we should be giving you tools that allow you not to be not to remove yourself from your body, but to engage in an aesthetically interesting way. So designing for living a better life, not for this afterlife or for dying. And designing to move the passions in others, in ourselves. So this is the connection back down into emotion. So movement, emotion, thinking as one. And we are movement through and through. Even when you're just sitting on your chair trying to listen to me, you are moving. If you were not moving, you would be dead. Your lungs are moving, you're breathing, you have these micro movements, but also the way you think is a movement of sorts. A thing that I think a lot of people find troublesome is that we use ourselves as through a first person perspective to design with ourselves. So if I make the system work for me on a very deep level with my personal experiences, But that doesn't mean that I can't engage with other people or other bodies. But I need to be more respectful of that, and that other people have other bodies, other constitutions. There's a difference between being a granny, 56 years old, a horseback rider and so on, and being Matt Jones, who is he enjoys riding bikes and doing other stuff. His body and his experiences are going to be different from mine. And the only way I could design for him is if I engage heavily with empathy and compassion, and understand what his body is and what his experiences are. We also design slowly. It takes bloody ages to build one of these systems. And that again goes against this Silicon Valley culture of choop, 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 let's do some post-it notes and ba, 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 here's a design idea, and boom, done. Let's just implement it, and we push that shit onto people, and then they can live their shitty lives with our shitty apps. So instead of doing that, we try to work really slowly, hone particular ideas very, very slowly in our design process. And to do this, we need to work with ourselves and with our own bodies and with our own experiences. And you don't have to be good at it, but you do have a body and you do have emotions, and you need to engage with those in order to understand this. We also try to disrupt what is habitual in order to see what is familiar and what we could be designing that is novel. So let me just explain what I mean by that. So if you're interlacing your fingers, now do it the other way. Quickly, choop choop. It's difficult, isn't it? The non-habitual one. So what if you do this? And then you do it the other way. Or if you push your jaw to the right and your tongue to the other way. And then do it the other way around. So why would you do this? Well, when you do the non-habitual thing, then the habitual one comes into focus, and you can start questioning that and design with that. And sorry to attack the ladies again, but if you sit like a man now on your chair, do a little man spread. You know, the thing that they do when they sit on buses and whatnot. So instead of sitting with your legs like this, sit with your legs apart. Okay? What does that feel like? Scary, huh? It makes you feel vulnerable. It makes you feel like I'm doing something that I shouldn't be doing. And you so, oh, I want it back again. Or guys, do you want to do some female gestures? Come on, some female gestures. Yeah. Is it okay? Can I do some? Or can you? Yeah. So there's a lot of shit, a lot of norms and habits that are imposed on us, that become ingrained with us, that we do without reflecting much. So we do all sorts of stuff, like here we do some sourdough baking in order to feel time, and then we design stuff with that, just to disrupt what you think is a normal, habitual way of doing design. Here we're doing design work with the Nottingham group on walking on a tightrope, and the visual sense is disturbed by this VR helmet thing, and then we put some vibration bits on the tightrope. It's not a tightrope, it's a plank, but it feels like walking on a tightrope. So we do all of these things where we try to do things in unusual ways or scary ways in order to see what we can design with. And so this is why we're doing this, designing drones through engaging with beanbags and whatnot. Okay, so that was the aesthetic part. It's about deepening your sensory appreciation as a designer, but also for the end user. I don't only want to have fun myself as a designer. I want whatever I design to continue to have that kind of relationship to the user, so that the user can deepen their sensory appreciation of the world or of themselves. And it's been super generative, oddly enough. This process that I thought was really crazy seems to work for more than one design group, and it seems to work for more than one design setting. Okay, let me go quickly through the end of my talk, which is about ethics. So do you know what ethics is? What is it? Who knows, huh? It's one of those terms that we throw around, and I don't know. It's hard. Is it about values, norms, about being a decent human being? What is that? I don't know. So, and I was really, really confused when I spent some time then with Richard Shusterman. Here he is again. And I read this quote by him. He says, while modernity's dominant ideology compartmentalizes and trivializes the aesthetics by sharply distinguishing it from more serious realms of knowledge and praxis, by identifying aesthetics with mere prettiness or appearance or surface or form or play or fantasy, somaesthetics blends aesthetics, cognition, and praxis to address some of philosophy's most central aims: knowledge, self-knowledge, right action, happiness, and justice. Do you understand this one? I did not. I'm not sure I still do. But I think, again, he's going back to the old Greek philosophers. So Aristotle, he would say things like, your habits, what you're brought up with, if you have a good family, a good mother and father who's brought you up with good habits, part of those habits are there to make you a good person who can engage with other people in nice ways. So as you're sharing a meal, for example, you don't steal food from the other person's plate. You don't eat in a way that pushes other people around you, you know. And why is this important? Well, it's because that's how you make friends. That's how you get status in society. That is how you experience compassionately what others are and what you can do together with other people. And so it becomes ingrained with you. It's about back to this thing where our bodies are completed by culture. The norms and the ways we act and move are there because we learned them. They become habitual. And it's only by habit that you know what to do when you encounter an ethically difficult situation. I don't know. Do you agree with this? Maybe, maybe don't. So anyway, we did this analysis of a design that we did. Ethics as happiness, yes. So by self-cultivating, by caring for yourself, you can also care for others. If I don't even understand my own pain and my own ways of moving and my own ways of disturbing others by pushing at them, then how on earth am I going to be able to be compassionate and empathic with other people if I don't even see them and their behaviors? And if I do, if I engage with this, then I can gain this richer plethora of choice. If I don't even know I have a choice in how to sit, I'm only going to sit in one way. And it's going to fulfill the norms of how women should be sitting. It might limit me in horrible ways. It might give me pain, but it's the only thing I know. It's the only habit I have. So by engaging deeply and questioning and defamiliarizing and whatnot, I can get a richer plethora of choice and expression. So in a way, as what we do as designers and what this stone was, is there is like a set of movements that are built into the tool that I'm asked to engage with, right? So I leave these sedimented movements in there, and that is what we do as designers. So we were doing these drones. I don't know why drones keep popping up in this talk, but anyway, we were doing drones for the opera stage. And they wanted, the Åsa Nandescarin, who is a dancer and choreographer, she wanted to have these drones that could challenge your norms and add expressivity to the opera. You know, the opera is all about big gestures, dying passionately, killing your children, or, you know, all of these things, right? And so what could drones do? And she wanted drones to be on stage and be part of that expression. In order to come there, she needed to be able to move together with these super scary drones. And that took some self-cultivation. She needed to change herself, her movements, her way of dancing, so that it would fit with what the drones could see and how they would move. So here you sorry. So here you see saw Åsa dancing with some drones, and you can see she was fairly relaxed. She had designed the drones for months and months and months to fit with her movements and so on. And she could be expressive with these drones. The drones were singing. They're part of the opera. They are Medea's children, and she's about to kill them. But anyway, so she made these drones part of her performance. And then here is Sarah, my master thesis student at the time. She was super scared of the drones, and you can see in this video. I hope you could see that her body language was way more rigid. She didn't know how to, they come too close. Oh my God, you know. So we've designed certain movements into these drones, and you need self-cultivation, care, and self-knowledge in order to be able to dance with them. You need to modify yourself and the drones to fit into this kind of expression that you want to do. And once Åsa saw Sarah dancing, she could immediately understand what the problem was. Okay, you need to do this, she says, in order to get the drone to move that way. You had your hand too close to your body, and then it comes too close. You need to do this. Blah, blah. So once you know yourself and how you become part of the drone, you can see how somebody else can be part of this drone interaction and be, you know, express empathy. And the last point here is just that before we had drones on the stage, we couldn't express these horrible things, but now we can. So there's a richer plethora of choice and expression. Yeah, I think I should skip that because I can see the time is flying. Anyway, freedom of choice, you know, it only appears if you know that you have a choice. How do you know you have a choice if you only act in the habitual ways? And I'm not saying that choice and aesthetics needs to be nice. It doesn't have to be nice. Sometimes it could be quite unpleasant. It's not about good or evil. It is really about engaging so that you enrich your possibilities of choosing. So yeah, that what, don't ask me about that. That's really hard. So anyway, Soma design and ethics, to me, it is about expressivity, and that ethics becomes this dynamic and emergent property of the interaction between me and some technology. It requires the self-knowledge, empathy, compassion, and freedom. Yeah. I'm just skipping this. I'm powering the diva. Anyway, so this is what I meant by aesthetics, ethics are both there, and they're the same thing more or less. And it's a dynamic and emergent property that shapes us. And we shape the technology to shape us. And so it becomes these sedimented movements that we leave behind in our designs and in our technologies. And that's where it's enacted, in all of these micro choices that we make. Maybe. And there's a book. Buy my book. I'd like to buy a horse, and I'm not rich yet, and I don't know how to get rich. So buy the bloody book. Okay. Okay, by that, I think I'm done.
Thank you so much. That literally mind-blowing. You know, after 10 months of being stuck on this kind of medium, maybe like me, all of my colleagues here can appreciate the chance to see and think about the body and about movement and expression. Yeah, it was a completely refreshing and new perspective on design, I'm sure for many people here. Kia, marvelous talk. Thank you very much indeed. We've got negative time now, but that's always good. So we've got negative time for questions, and I'm going to stay here and open up some questions. John has put one in the chat here. John, do you want to articulate it? I can't understand it because you're clever. So off to John. Are you still there?
Give me a break, Matt. Give me a break. I just wondered, quite fascinating, the way you sort of allude to certain philosophical systems and so on through this man Shusterman. I just wondered in general, what role do identifiable philosophical systems play in setting research agendas in HCI, and also in perhaps shaping a research school? Because the impression I've got, not being in the field, that I now know you run a special style of research school, which will have some influence and certainly opens up people's imagination in ways that I couldn't have imagined before I came to this talk. So, and also I added a little dig here. Something that bothers me a lot is that I find computer science departments essentially an ethical desert, right? And although there is a few tick boxes for certain, what is the word, accreditation programs in those countries that have accreditation programs, even the most primitive ethics that you would learn in arts and humanities, in business schools, in God knows where, we don't even get even close to, constitutive, consequential ethical theories, deontological ethical theories, and things of this kind, which basically boil down to, do you believe in ends justify the means, or is it all about means? And I'd be intrigued, since you give these talks, how people relate to these dollops of philosophy.
Yeah, so HCI has, and I'm sure Matt could answer this as well, but HCI has had a strong influence from different philosophical strands. So one was phenomenology. Now, given that we get a lot of AI, artificial intelligence, then we get a strong cognitivist position creeping back again, showing its ugly head. But HCI is also, it's such a mix of disciplines. So parts of it is driven by technology advances. So basically taking those computer science results and trying to make them actually work for people. Parts of what we do is very much driven by sociology or anthropology or ethnography. So it comes out of that more social science theory. And so I think we are, it's a good thing. Our field is allowing for different ways of approaching design. Mine happen to be very inspired by philosophy. I think philosophy is great because it forces you to rethink basic things like aesthetics or ethics, or what the hell are we designing for anyway? And so to me, it makes sense, but not to everyone in HCI. I don't know, Matt, if you want to comment on that. Is that a fair account?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely the case, and I should give some context here. John is really an HCI person, but is
pretending not to be, huh?
He's pretending so. He's a theoretical computer scientist who took the risk 15, 16 years ago. John was head of department here. To think maybe we should broaden out our thinking, and it was a very strong and still a strong theory group in the department, and said, let's see if we can dabble in HCI or something like that. And I'm hoping, John, that's been an enrichment. And so
it's been transformative, Matt.
Oh, thank you, John. Tick.
In a positive way, I might add.
I mean, my question back to John or others around the table would be, clearly, as HCI researchers, and many of us are here, but quite a number of people aren't, we take this as part of our practice. The question is, how could or should we not inject this kind of thinking into the other subdisciplines of computer science as well, Keir, as reaching out to the multidisciplines? So, if John, if Uli Berger or Anton injected Soma design into their proof theories, I mean, what would happen? Okay, that's a thought experiment, but a critical one for me. How do we do this kind of adventure in areas which see themselves as, more technical, inverted commas, more mature, inverted commas? And I think that's an interesting one. an interesting challenge and a question. Other questions or suggestions? I'm not going to let you come back, John. Alan's waving his hand.
No, there's things that I was thinking of, but I'll actually jump into this one because I think it's fascinating that there's a whole brand of AI philosophers, so like Andy Clark in Edinburgh, who came to that philosophical questions through engagement, particularly with robotics. And I think it's particularly the robotics because as soon as they hit actual action in the world, the sort of sealed ways of thinking and saying, I'm going to design algorithms don't work because algorithms are part of a bigger context. So from a HSI point of view, we perhaps looked at the social and psychological world of people's interaction, but it's interesting, even sort of like starting off, with no people around whatsoever, with no human context in a sense, apart from that which comes from being people doing work. As soon as that start to engage the physical world, they're forced into, and often these more sort of phenomenological positions. I mean, Andy Clark, I'd say probably more of a, and I warm to more a slightly more sort of formalist approach to philosophy, a very British approach to philosophy, perhaps, but certainly one that's rooted in sort of phenomenological and sort of body-centered thinking. So the two come together very closely.
Unfortunately, a lot of people who do robot research, when they talk about embodied robots, they're not really talking about this. They're not talking about how the robot is in the world together with us. They're really talking about the fact that the robot has a body. And that's completely uninteresting to me. It is that interaction with us and in that world, that is because it has to be in the world. And also, a lot of the work there is about imitating human behavior. It's just like crap work, I think. But
the colleagues that are doing that in the group. No, it's not. We have time, I think, for one more. I'm going to go to Ben Wilson because you put something in the chat to me. Do you want to raise your question?
Thank you very much. First, I want to say to Keir, thank you very much for a very interesting talk. It sparked off a number of things, including the kind of stuff that Alan's talked about. And I can imagine a situation where somebody's attachment to a breathing lamp because of the way it makes them feel becomes something that's perhaps even more significant than attachment to their phone. A slight aside about your comment about making robots human-like, I think there may well be a lot of shit associated with that, but what it really starts to inform us about, I think, is how we can use that to reflect on ourselves, because there's a huge amount about human condition that is reflected in our interactions with intelligent devices. My I guess question or critique comment was the philosophical challenge of Shusterman that you presented. The idea that the modernity's dominant ideology being that it trivializes the aesthetic, I have a problem with, because I think it starts off as a philosophy by ignoring what not only I, but lots of people think is the truly dominant ideology in the world today. The idea that gross inequality is a natural outcome of human interaction in a real world. And I think there's a huge amount that we could get into there if there were more time about what maybe needs to be in place philosophically in terms of carts and horses.
I totally agree. And so somaesthetics for me doesn't solve all my problems. It solves particular problems to do with certain technologies that are growing in importance in our field. So shape-changing elements, sensors and actuators, wearable technologies, interactive textiles, and so on, and how to design with those stuff that comes very close to my body. And to me, and as you were talking about before, robots, drones, and so on, that are suddenly in the world. And I think somaesthetics has a very strong political message, and but it's not a tool for all. Somaesthetics is a particular stance that informs certain kinds of design decisions, and then there are others that need other theoretical groundings to move forward. I totally agree. Yeah. But to me, it's been at least, it worked for feminist issues. Definitely. It worked as a way of recognizing that bodies are different, differently privileged, differently constituted, with different experiences. And in a way that HCI has never done. In HCI has always been this like, oh, there's a normal user, or I can do participatory design with a few users, and then that will be representing all of these other people. And I think we've just assumed that we can know what other people are, which is no. You need to work really hard to come to a position where you can understand, for example, privilege and how that's enacted on our bodies. In our bodies, on our bodies, in our culture. Yeah.
So, Kia, we're going to have to end there. I guess what you've done today is to embody what we are literally embody what we're trying to do in the computational foundry across all disciplines, which is to set agenda which provoke and challenge and reshape our field, often pure science, but also more broadly. You've inspired, certainly, it's always difficult to speak for the entire audience, so I'll speak for myself. You've inspired me again today, even though I'm very, very familiar with your work, and you've re-energized me at the start of the year, where I hope that all of us can reconnect and be physical again, be in touch with our bodies and each other's bodies, to do good to the world through our discipline. I certainly would recommend Kia's book, I Get 5%. And Kia, as soon as we can get you over here, we'd love to show you the physical and digital world that Swansea is. And in the meantime, we're going to be sending something that you can put in your body from us. I would give you to be anticipating that. And in the meantime, let's show our appreciation to Kia. Thank you so much indeed.
Thank you. I will hold you to that. I've never been to Swansea. You never invited me, ever. We
couldn't afford you until now. Thank you all very much for joining. As a reminder, in a couple of weeks' time, we've got Anne Bowden, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the disruptor bank Starling. And just like with Kia, she has changed the world with her ideas and with her technology. Join us then. In the meantime, have a lovely evening and go and be in touch with your body. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.